The wallet hit the floor at 11:47 p.m. Nobody saw it fall. Nobody except Zephyr Arden. Rain was destroying Chicago outside. Wind bent the streetlights sideways. Inside the halcyon diner, the heat from the kitchen mixed with cigarette smoke and expensive cologne, and the whole room felt like it was holding its breath. 3 men had just walked out. 3 men who made every single person in that diner go completely still. Hi viewers. If you were Zephyr and found $5,000 on the floor tonight, would you keep it or chase the stranger into the rain? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Zephyr stood at table 7 with a coffee pot in his hand. His apron was wet from a spill Vaughn had screamed at him about 20 minutes earlier. His wrist still stung where Vaughn grabbed him. He hadn't made a sound then. He never made a sound. Not because he was scared. Because he couldn't. Zephyr Arden had been mute since he was 9 years old, and the world had never once let him forget it. He looked down at the leather wallet near the booth leg. Thick. Dark brown. Barely touched the ground before it folded shut like it was protecting something. He picked it up. His fingers felt the weight immediately. This wasn't a regular wallet. He opened it just enough, and his chest tightened. $100 bills. Stacked clean? No crease. Wrapped in a band like they came straight from a vault. He didn't count it. He didn't have to. There was enough cash inside to pay his rent for 4 months and still have money left over. His hands started shaking. Not from greed. From fear. Because he already knew who dropped it. The whole diner knew who those 3 men were the second they walked through the door. Nobody said their names out loud, but Zephyr had seen the way people stopped chewing mid-bite. Saw how the bartender pretended to clean a glass he had already cleaned 3 times. Saw how his co-worker Demi slipped into the kitchen and didn't come back out. Dorian Virelli. Cashin Virelli. Silas Virelli. Triplets. All alpha. All dangerous. And now completely gone, 3 black armored vehicles already pulling away from the curb outside, red taillights disappearing into the storm like burning eyes. Zephyr should have put the wallet in the lost and found box behind the counter. He should have handed it to Vaughn. He should have done anything except what his body did next. He looked inside one more time. That's when he saw it. Tucked between 2 bills. Small. Flat. Dark. A memory card. Wrapped in a piece of cloth that had a dried brown stain along one edge. His stomach dropped. That wasn't coffee. Zephyr stood frozen for exactly 4 seconds. The rain pounded the windows. Someone laughed at the bar. The kitchen bell rang twice. He made a decision that would change everything. He ran. His shoes hit standing water so hard the splash went up to his knees. The rain wasn't falling anymore. It was attacking. Zephyr ran straight into it. No jacket, no umbrella, his server apron still tied around his waist, and he didn't look back once. The sidewalk was nearly empty. Just headlights and horns and the sound of water rushing into storm drains. He saw the convoy 2 blocks ahead. 3 black SUVs moving in tight formation. Not fast. Controlled. The kind of slow that says we don't need to rush because nothing in this city touches us. He pushed harder. His lungs burned. His sneakers squeaked against wet concrete. 1 car turned left. Then the second one. The third one slowed, barely, at a yellow light. Zephyr didn't think. He stepped directly into the road in front of it. The SUV stopped. For a long second, nothing happened. Then the rear window lowered. 1 inch. 2 inches. All the way down. Dorian Virelli looked at him like he was trying to solve a math problem that didn't have a right answer. His face was unreadable. Not angry. Not surprised. Just watching. Zephyr held up the wallet with both hands. Nobody moved. Then the door opened. Cashin stepped out first, tall, jaw tight, eyes sweeping the street like he was already calculating how many ways this could go wrong. He walked up to Zephyr slowly. Deliberately. Who are you? Not a question. A test. Zephyr reached into his apron pocket and pulled out the small notepad he always carried. He wrote fast. His handwriting came out uneven from the cold. I work at the diner. You drop this. Cash and read it. His expression didn't change. You ran 6 blocks in the rain to return a stranger's wallet. Zephyr nodded. Cashin stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked back at the SUV. Silas climbed out next. Quieter than his brother. He didn't look at Zephyr's face immediately. His eyes went straight to Zephyr's arms. The sleeves of his uniform were soaked through. The bruise on his left wrist had gone purple in the cold. Silas said nothing. Dorian stepped out last. He took the wallet. Opened it. Checked inside. Something passed across his face, fast, almost invisible, and then it was gone. He looked at Zephyr. Nobody returns mafia money. Zephyr wrote again. It wasn't mine to keep. The rain fell between them. Dorian closed the wallet. His jaw moved slightly. Like he was deciding something that required more thought than it should. Then he asked the question Zephyr wasn't ready for. Where do you live? Zephyr wrote the address without thinking. He didn't know why. Something in Dorian's voice made lying feel more dangerous than the truth. The window went back up. The door closed. The convoy moved. Zephyr stood in the rain until the taillights disappeared again. He walked back to the halcyon, pushed open the door, and stopped. 2 police officers stood at the front counter. Vaughn was beside them, arms crossed, pointing directly at Zephyr with a look on his face that was almost satisfied. That's him, Vaughn said. That's the one who stole from the register. The handcuffs were already in the officer's hand. Zephyr didn't move. Couldn't. His shoes were still dripping on the tile. His hair was flat against his forehead. He probably looked guilty just standing there, soaking wet, breathing hard, eyes wide. He didn't steal anything. But he couldn't say that. He pulled out his notepad. Wet. The pen tore through the paper on the first try. He tried again. I didn't take anything. Check the cameras. The officer barely glanced at it. Sir, we need you to come with us. Vaughn was already talking over him, loud, calm, rehearsed. $300 missing from the drawer. 2 other employees confirmed they saw Zephyr near the register. Security footage from that camera had corrupted during the storm. Convenient. Zephyr had been alone during his break. Also convenient. Every single word was a lie. And every single customer in that diner sat perfectly still, watching, and said absolutely nothing. That was the part that cut deepest. Not Vaughn. Not the officers. The silence from the room. 40 people who had watched Zephyr work every single night. Watched him carry their plates without complaint. Watched Vaughn bark at him, grab his arm, throw a cup against the wall near his head once, and every single one of them was looking at their phones or their coffee right now. Because getting involved cost something. And Zephyr Arden cost nothing. The officer reached for his arm. The door opened. All 3 of them walked in. The room didn't go quiet this time, it went dead. Completely. Like someone cut the audio feed. Dorian Virelli walked straight to the counter. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. I want to see the security footage from this register. The real one. Not the corrupted file. Vaughn's face shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. I don't know what you're. I have a copy, Dorian said. We run business at this location. We maintain our own feed. He placed the phone on the counter. Press play. The footage was clear. Time-stamped. High resolution. It showed Vaughn opening the register himself. Removing cash. Pocketing it. Then flagging down a coworker and pointing toward the area where Zephyr had been standing earlier. 20 seconds of video. 20 seconds that destroyed everything Vaughn had just said. The officer looked at the screen. Looked at Vaughn. Vaughn didn't run. He just deflated, like something inside him gave up all at once. Cashin stepped close to the nearest officer and spoke quietly. Zephyr couldn't hear the words. But the officer nodded twice, uncuffed his own hands from behind his back. A habit, apparently, and turned toward Vaughn instead. The room still wasn't breathing. Silas stood near the exit. He hadn't touched anything. Hadn't spoken. He just watched every single person in the diner with flat, patient eyes, like he was memorizing faces. Dorian turned to Zephyr. "You're done here." Then, without blinking, "Come work for us." Zephyr stood there with wet clothes and a torn notepad. He looked at the door. He looked at Dorian. He wrote one word. "Okay." He walked out of the halcyon diner for the last time. Halfway down the block, he pulled his collar up against the wind. Didn't look back. Across the street, in the shadows between two parked cars, a phone camera clicked. The flash was off. But the shutter wasn't. The estate didn't look like a house. It looked like a decision. Black iron gates. Stone walls that went up higher than the streetlights. Security cameras mounted at angles that left no blind spots. And Zephyr noticed, because he was already looking for them. 2 guards at the entrance. Both armed. Both watching him the entire time the car rolled through. Nobody spoke during the drive. Zephyr sat in the back between Cashin and the window. He kept his notepad on his knee. Didn't write anything. There was nothing to write yet, and something about the quiet inside that vehicle felt like a rule he wasn't supposed to break. The mansion interior opened up like something from a completely different world. Marble floors. High ceilings. Not flashy, controlled. Every piece of furniture placed with intention. No clutter. No warmth either, not exactly, but no coldness. Just precision. Silas disappeared immediately. No explanation. Cashin sat Zephyr at a long table in a side room and placed a single folder in front of him. "Someone inside our organization is selling information," Cashin said. Flat. Direct. No dramatic pause. Just facts. Shipping routes. Meeting times. Names. "It's been happening for 8 months. He opened the folder. Documents. Coded shipment logs. Names with numbers beside them that didn't match the amounts in the official records. "You have no history here. No loyalty debts. No connections to any faction inside this building." Cashin leaned back. "That makes you useful?" Zephyr looked at the papers. He wrote, "What do you need from me? Cross-reference these logs. Find where the numbers stop matching." Simple enough on the surface. But as Zephyr started working, slowly, carefully, the weight of what he was reading settled in. The Virelli Reach wasn't just the city. It was inside the city's structure. Judges whose names appeared in coded columns. A state senator whose office received regular payments labeled as private security consultation. 3 names inside the Chicago Port Authority. 2 inside the department Zephyr had walked past his whole life without thinking twice about. This wasn't an organization hiding inside the city. It was woven into it. Dorian came in around midnight. Set a mug of coffee beside Zephyr without asking if he wanted it. Didn't sit. Just stood looking at the documents for a moment. "You're fast," he said. Zephyr wrote, "Numbers don't lie the way people do." Something moved across Dorian's face. He didn't respond. He just picked up one of the flagged pages and studied it. They worked in silence for 2 hours. And somewhere in that silence, something shifted. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just a shift. The kind that only makes sense later. At 2 a.m., Zephyr's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. A message. Unknown number. "Your apartment was broken into tonight. Don't go back." His blood went cold. He showed Dorian the screen without a word. Dorian read it. His jaw tightened. He pulled out his own phone and typed something fast. Then he looked at Zephyr. "You're staying here tonight?" Zephyr nodded. No argument. His hands were still. But his mind was already running through every person who knew where he lived. He had written that address on a notepad. In the rain. Standing in front of 3 men he had never met before. His phone buzzed again. Different number. Blocked this time. One line. Leave before they destroy you too. He didn't sleep. He sat in the room they gave him, clean, quiet, expensive, nothing personal on the walls, and he stared at the ceiling until the light outside the window changed from black to gray. Someone knew he was here. That meant one of 2 things. Either he'd been followed, or someone inside this estate had already talked. Neither answer felt safe. He was at the document table by 6 in the morning. Coffee already there. He didn't know who left it. That bothered him more than it should have. He pulled up the shipment logs again. 3 sets of records. Same dates. Different numbers. The differences were small enough to miss if you weren't specifically hunting for them. But once Zephyr found the pattern, it was everywhere. Consistent gaps. Same type of item. Same destination port. Adjusted every time a particular name appeared in the authorization column. He circled the name. Then he stopped. He'd seen it already. Last night. In a different section. He flipped back 3 pages. There it was. The same name, on a completely different document. A guest log. Dated 4 days ago. Someone who had been inside this estate recently. Someone who was supposed to be loyal. His pen hovered above the paper. He didn't circle it yet. Footsteps outside the door. He closed the folder fast. The door opened. Dorian, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, carrying his own coffee like it was any normal morning. He stopped when he saw Zephyr's face. What did you find? Again. Not a question. Zephyr hesitated. Just 1 second. Then he opened the folder and placed his finger on the name without looking up. Dorian looked at the page. His expression didn't change. But his hand tightened around the mug. Keep this between us, he said. Quiet. Level. Don't show Cashin. Don't show Silas. Not yet. Zephyr nodded. The days that followed moved in strange rhythms. Tense mornings, then long quiet stretches in the evening that felt almost ordinary. Dorian started bringing 2 coffees instead of 1. They worked late. Sometimes they didn't even work, just sat in the same room, Dorian reading, Zephyr organizing documents, and the silence between them felt less like absence and more like agreement. Cashin barely spoke to Zephyr. But he watched everything. Every entrance, every face, every movement in the halls. Zephyr noticed Cashin's right shoulder one night. The way he held it. The way he turned slightly when someone got too close on that side. He'd been hurt, recently. And he hadn't told anyone. Then came the dinner. Private. Just the 4 of them at the far end of the main dining table. The staff left the food and cleared out. Silas poured wine. Cashin passed the bread. Dorian was mid-sentence, something about a contact in the port, when he stopped. He set his glass down. Reached for the water instead. Took 1 sip. And then put a hand on the table like he needed it to stay upright. Dorian! Cashin was on his feet before anyone else moved. Dorian didn't collapse. He caught himself. But his face had gone pale in a way that had nothing to do with tiredness. Silas picked up Dorian's wine glass. Looked at it. Set it down slow. He looked at the kitchen door. Nobody spoke. Security pulled the footage 30 minutes later. The kitchen camera from 7:43 p.m. to 8:12 p.m. was completely gone. 29 minutes. Erased clean. Zephyr sat against the wall in the hallway, knees pulled up, and stared at the floor. Someone had just tried to poison Dorian inside his own home. And then Cashin crouched in front of him. His voice was low. Flat. Colder than Zephyr had ever heard it. The glass, Cashin said. It had your name on the order ticket. That wine was poured for you. The poison was never meant for Dorian. Dorian had reached for the wrong glass. Chapter 6. The first shot came from the rooftop. Nobody saw it. They heard it. Glass. Metal. Then the second shot, closer. The lead SUV swerved hard right and clipped a parked delivery truck. The sound of that collision hit Zephyr's chest before his brain caught up to what was happening. Then everything moved at once. Down, get down! Cashin's hand hit the back of Zephyr's neck and pushed him flat across the seat before the third shot punched through the rear passenger window. Cold air flooded the cabin. Zephyr's face pressed into leather, and he couldn't see anything, just heard doors opening, boots on wet pavement, voices cutting through the rain in sharp, controlled bursts. He lifted his head. He shouldn't have. The street was chaos. 3 vehicles stopped at broken angles across 2 lanes. Men in dark clothing coming from both sides of the block, not running, moving, tactical, fast, practiced. Like they'd done this before. Like they knew exactly where the convoy would stop. That matters. Pause on that. They knew. Cashin was already outside, weapon drawn, moving toward the closest attacker with the kind of calm that had nothing to do with safety, and everything to do with training. He didn't fire immediately. He waited 1 beat, then 2 shots. Both landed. Zephyr couldn't move. His body had made that decision without asking him. Feet on the floor, back against the seat, hands gripping nothing. His mind was running every direction and going nowhere. He had no weapon. No training. No voice to call out with, even if screaming would have helped. The rear door on his side ripped open. He flinched back so hard he hit the far door. Dorian. Not an attacker. Dorian, crouching low, rain running down his face, hand already reaching inside. Come on! Now! Zephyr moved. They crossed 6 feet of open street to a recessed doorway, and Dorian's body stayed between Zephyr and the open road the entire time. Not an accident. Not luck. A choice. Made in real time, without hesitation, while bullets were still finding targets 20 yards away. They pressed into the doorway. Dorian's shoulder was against Zephyr's chest. Close enough that Zephyr could feel him breathing. Silas appeared from nowhere. He came around the front of the second SUV moving fast, and he had someone by the collar. One of the attackers. Still alive. Barely. Silas said something to him. Low. Zephyr couldn't hear the words. The man shook his head. Once. Silas didn't repeat himself. He didn't need to. The fight ended faster than it started. 4 attackers down? 2 others gone, melted back into the alleys they came from. The street looked like a movie scene that forgot to turn the cameras on. Steam rising from a cracked radiator. Glass on wet asphalt catching the orange glow of a streetlight. Cashin walked back toward the doorway. 1 hand pressed to his ribs. Still moving straight. But the way he was breathing, that wasn't normal. Dorian looked at Zephyr. You good? Zephyr nodded. Dorian straightened up from the crouch, and that's when Zephyr saw it. Left side. Just below the shoulder. A dark stain spreading through the fabric of his jacket, moving slow but certain. Zephyr grabbed his arm. Dorian looked down. Then back up. Like it was a minor inconvenience. Back at the estate, Zephyr cleaned the wound himself. Dorian sat still. Didn't make a sound. The bullet had grazed deep, not fatal, but not clean either. Zephyr worked with both hands, focused, precise. And when he reached for the gauze on the edge of the table, his fingers brushed against a leather folder tucked beneath the first aid kit. He paused. He pulled it out just slightly. His name was on the tab. His full name. His old address. A photograph, taken from a distance, probably 6 months ago, of him walking out of the Halcyon diner. And a date. Printed at the top of the first page. 4 months before the night the wallet hit the floor. Chapter 7. He didn't say anything. He finished bandaging the wound. Taped the gauze down clean. Stood up. Handed Dorian the folder without a word, without a note, without an expression that gave away what was already burning through him. Dorian looked at it. He didn't pretend not to know what it was. He set it on the table between them. How long have you had that? Dorian asked. Zephyr wrote, long enough. Silence. He wrote again, you've been watching me for months. Before the wallet. Before any of this. Dorian didn't deny it. That was almost worse than a lie would have been. Your father's name was Emerson Arden, Dorian said. Not a question. A statement, delivered carefully, like he'd been holding it in one hand for a long time and didn't know if putting it down would break something. Zephyr went completely still. He worked for us. 8 years ago. Dorian stood slowly, careful of his shoulder. He found something inside the organization. A trafficking operation being run through our shipping network without our knowledge. He documented it. All of it. Then he disappeared before he could hand the evidence to anyone we trusted. Zephyr's pen was in his hand. He wasn't writing. We didn't know what happened to him for years. Then 18 months ago, a source told us the evidence still existed. That Emerson had hidden it before he vanished. And that he left behind someone who might know where. He looked at Zephyr directly. You. Everything Zephyr thought he understood about the last 2 weeks collapsed and rearranged itself into something uglier and more complicated. The wallet. The test. The job offer. The late nights and the 2 coffees and the silence that felt like understanding. All of it. Planned before he ever picked up that wallet off the diner floor. He wrote fast, hands shaking. You used me. Yes, Dorian said. Simple. No defense layered underneath it. That honesty almost made it worse. But that's not all it became, Dorian added. Quieter now. And you know that. Zephyr pushed back from the table. He wasn't running, not yet, but he needed distance. He crossed to the window. Outside, the estate grounds were lit and guarded and completely enclosed. Exactly what they always were. A cage that knew how to look like protection. He stood there for a long time. Then he wrote one line and left it on the table. I want to leave. He walked to the main hall. Past the guards who watched him but didn't stop him, because Dorian hadn't given an order yet. Through the entry corridor. To the front gate. He pushed it open. The air outside was cold. He stepped through. And then he stopped. Because across the narrow road, parked along the tree line with the headlights off, were 2 vehicles he didn't recognize. Dark. Still. Waiting. 3 men stood outside them. One raised something. Not a phone. The gate slammed behind him before Zephyr could process what direction to move. Dorian's hand closed around his arm and pulled him sideways, fast, hard, just as something hit the stone wall where he'd been standing. A sound like a hammer striking concrete. Chips of rock scattered across the ground. They were already inside. Not the estate, the gatehouse. Small room. One light. Dorian pressed Zephyr against the interior wall and held up one hand. Stay. Then he was on his phone. Within 4 minutes, the estate was fully activated. That's the only way to describe it. The lights along the perimeter changed. Guards repositioned. 2 vehicles moved from the garage around to the front approach. Cashin was coordinating on a separate line, voice flat, clipped, giving orders like he was reading off a list he had memorized years ago. The attack outside lasted 11 minutes. Not a prolonged siege. A statement. Whoever sent those men wasn't trying to level the estate. They were sending a message, and the message was, we know exactly where you are. We know exactly when you moved. And we are running out of patience. When it went quiet, Cashin came inside. His right arm was in a makeshift sling. The injury from days before, the shoulder he had been guarding, had been hit again. He sat down without being asked and said nothing for a full minute. Then, it's Devereaux. Senator Aldrich Devereaux. The name that appeared in the shipping logs. The name on the guest list 4 days before the poisoned glass. The name with the cleanest record in Chicago, and apparently the deepest reach inside the Virelli organization. He's been using our ports for 3 years, Cashin said. Not our product. His own. Moving it through our routes. Paying people inside this house to keep it quiet. Zephyr was writing before Cashin finished speaking. He pushed the notepad across the table. The records I flagged last week, the authorization column. The same name every time. That's the person he was paying. Someone still in this building. Cashin read it. Looked up. Who? Zephyr wrote the name. Cashin stared at it for a long time. His jaw moved once, then stopped. Dorian sat at the far end of the table, watching both of them. His shoulder was wrapped. His face was unreadable again, back to that place it went when he was doing math that didn't have clean answers. There's something else, Dorian said. He looked at Zephyr. Your father's evidence. If it still exists, Devereaux knows it does. That's why he moved on you. Not us. You. Zephyr absorbed that slowly. His father had hidden something. And someone had spent years making sure it stayed hidden, until a mute Omega from the night shift accidentally walked into the middle of it by picking up a wallet. He thought about his father. He hadn't let himself do that in a long time. Emerson Arden, who used to make coffee at 5 a.m. before every shift. Who kept a small notebook in his jacket pocket. Who disappeared when Zephyr was 14 and never sent a single word afterward. Or so Zephyr had believed. He reached into his own jacket. The inside pocket. Where he kept his notepad. His hand found something else. Something small. Flat. He pulled it out slowly. A folded piece of paper. Old. The crease marks had gone soft from age. He didn't know when it had gotten there. He didn't remember putting it there. He unfolded it. His father's handwriting. 4 lines. An address. A locker number. And at the bottom, 1 sentence. If you're reading this, then you were brave enough. Now finish it. Zephyr looked up. Across the room, through the security feeds on the monitors, he caught movement on the screen showing the east side corridor. Silas. Alone. Walking toward the exterior exit that led to the service road. The same service road the attackers had come from. His phone, pointed at his ear. Screen facing the camera just long enough to show the contact name. Devereaux. Nobody moved for 3 seconds. Zephyr held the paper out toward Dorian without a word. Dorian read the screen. Looked at Cashin. The look between them was fast and said more than a conversation would have. Cashin was already standing. Don't, Dorian said. Cashin stopped. Barely. Not yet. Dorian's voice was controlled, low and tight, the way a wire sounds just before the tension becomes too much. We don't know what he's doing. But Zephyr knew something. He'd been watching Silas for days. The quietest one. The one who watched faces instead of rooms. The one who cleaned his weapon every night at the same table in the East Wing at 11 p.m. without fail. He wrote quickly, what if he went in on purpose? Both brothers looked at him. He kept writing, Silas found the name before I did. He knew who the leak was. If he wanted to warn Devereaux, he had 100 chances. He didn't. He went to them tonight. After the attack. After they already showed their hand. Cashin picked up the notepad. Read it twice. He's inside, Cashin said. Slow. Like the words were finding their shape as he spoke them. He went inside their operation. They moved. 3 vehicles. No lights until they cleared the estate perimeter. Zephyr was in the second one and he didn't argue about it. Dorian hadn't asked him to stay behind, and he wasn't going to offer. The docks were on the south end of the port. Abandoned on paper. Active in reality. 3 warehouses. 1 loading corridor that connected them all. The kind of place that looked empty from satellite images and wasn't. They went in from 2 directions. What happened inside those warehouses took less than 22 minutes. Zephyr stayed close to the center vehicle. He heard it, all of it, Gunfire from the east corridor. A sound like something very heavy falling. Shouting in two different languages. Then a stretch of quiet that somehow felt louder than the noise. Then Silas walked out of the east warehouse entrance. Alone. His jacket was torn. His face had a cut along the left side. And he was holding a hard drive, small, black, the kind used for encrypted storage, in one hand. He crossed the loading area and stopped in front of Dorian. "Devereaux's been building a case against us for 2 years," Silas said. "Federal cooperation. He fed them our routes, our contacts, our financial structure. In exchange, they gave him immunity for everything he ran through our ports. He handed Dorian the drive. That's his side of the agreement. Every communication. Every document. Every name he gave them." Silas paused. "Including 3 federal agents who were taking payments from both sides." Cashin exhaled slowly. Dorian turned the drive over in his hands. Then Zephyr stepped forward. He unfolded his father's note and held it toward Silas. Silas read it. His expression shifted, just slightly. Something like recognition. "The locker," Silas said. He looked at Dorian. "Emerson's locker. We always assumed it was cleared out." "It wasn't," Zephyr wrote. They went. The storage facility was 12 minutes from the docks. An old building near the transit hub. Locker 114. The lock was original, hadn't been touched in years, judging by the rust on the hinges. Zephyr opened it with the key he didn't realize he'd been carrying until that moment. His father had mailed it to him years ago inside a birthday card. No explanation. Zephyr had kept it because throwing it away felt wrong. Inside the locker, a sealed envelope. A second hard drive. And a photograph of Emerson Arden standing outside the Halcyon diner, the same diner, holding Zephyr's hand. Zephyr was small in the photo. Maybe 6 years old. He didn't cry. But it took everything he had. The evidence inside that locker, combined with Silas's drive, built a complete picture. Devereaux's trafficking operation. The federal agents on his payroll. The internal contacts inside the Virelli organization who had taken his money. The shipping logs. The names. All of it. Cashin made 3 calls. By morning, raids had started across the city. Dorian sat beside Zephyr in the vehicle on the way back. The drive was long. Nobody spoke for most of it. Then Dorian said, not loudly, not with ceremony, "Stay." One word. Not a command. Not a question. Zephyr looked at him. Dorian didn't look away. Zephyr reached for his notepad. He wrote something, then paused. Crossed it out. Wrote it again. Folded the paper. And placed it in Dorian's hand. Dorian opened it. He read it. He didn't say anything else. But his hand closed around the paper and stayed closed, all the way home. For months later, the courtroom footage ran on every news channel in the city. Senator Aldrich Devereaux. 3 federal agents. 11 other individuals connected to the port operation. All indicted. All facing charges that weren't going to disappear quietly. Chicago breathed differently after that. Not completely clean. Cities like this don't work that way. But different. Like something heavy had been moved, even if only a few inches. The Virelli estate restructured. Quietly. The way those things always happen, not announced, just rearranged. Cashin took over the financial channels. Silas managed the port contacts directly now, which made sense, given how things had ended at the docks. Dorian handled everything that required a face in the room. And Zephyr organized it all. Not because anyone made him. Because he was good at it. Because numbers didn't lie. Because inside this place, guarded, complicated, sometimes terrifying, he had found something he hadn't expected. Somewhere he wasn't invisible. The gala was Dorian's idea. A room full of political figures, old money, rival family representatives, and people who had spent years pretending the Virelli name didn't exist in their social calendars. Marble floors. Low lighting. The kind of event where every handshake meant something beyond the handshake. Zephyr wore a jacket that actually fit. First time in a long time. Dorian found him near the far window, the one that looked out over the city, same direction as the lake, lights going all the way to the horizon. He stood beside him for a moment without speaking. Then he turned toward the room. And in a voice that carried, not loud, but intentional, he said, "This is Zephyr Arden. He stays beside me." That was it. No title. No explanation. Just a fact, delivered in a room full of people who understood exactly what it meant. Zephyr didn't look at the faces that turned toward him. He looked at the window. At the rain starting again outside, soft this time, not violent. Just rain. The ordinary kind that doesn't change anything. Except tonight it did something small. It reminded him of the night he ran 6 blocks in a storm to return money that wasn't his. He almost smiled. They left together an hour later. Down the steps. Into the night. The car pulled forward. Zephyr reached for the door. And stopped. Across the street. Parked just inside the edge of the streetlight's reach. A black vehicle, engine off, lights off. And inside it, visible just enough through the passenger window. A man. Watching the gala entrance. Smiling. One hand resting on the dashboard. Holding an identical leather wallet. Zephyr survived what most people wouldn't even walk toward. He found loyalty in the last place anyone would look. And he never said a single word. If this story moved you, if you believe in showing up with integrity even when everything tells you to run, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every story here is built to remind you what people are actually capable of, the strength, the survival, the choices nobody sees. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done with that wallet? Would you have kept it, or chased the storm like Zephyr did? Your answer might inspire someone else. That's the whole point.